Claire Jennings never made a display of their deepening rapport. Instead, she would slide him a steaming mug of a comforting brew without fanfare, tuck an unruly curl behind her ear, and wait quietly for whichever bits of honesty he felt prepared to share that day. She never categorized him as anxious, avoidant, or perpetually guarded. She just listened, and in those moments, Ethan felt the neglected parts of himself stir, delicate and startled, like creatures peering out from a thicket after a tempest. Then, on one drizzly Thursday, the cafe's power flickered. The ensuing hush magnified the distant rumble of thunder and the constant patter of raindrops against the windows. In that half-lit golden glow, Claire lit a single cedar-scented candle and placed it carefully between them. Ethan noticed a fading scar along her left wrist and, before he could reconsider, asked its origin. Claire traced the mark lightly, as if weighing how much memory to disclose. "I tried to rescue my father's camera when our home caught fire," she murmured. "I managed to save only myself." Those words hovered, tender yet raw, and Ethan felt an ache twist behind his ribs, a pain that wasn't solely his own. As the rain relented, he surprised himself by inviting her for a walk. Claire closed the register, flipped the sign to "See you tomorrow," and joined him into the damp evening. Together they strolled to the riverside promenade, their shoes splashing through shallow puddles while city lights blurred like watercolor streaks. Across the Charles River, neither uttered a word until they reached the railing overlooking the dark water. Then Ethan broke the silence. "Every time someone draws near, I picture them leaving. I sense the echo of a farewell that hasn't even occurred." Claire nodded, carefully brushing droplets from her lashes. "That echo isn't fate. Ethan, it's memory masquerading as the future." He was struck by how precisely she named the spectre he had been chasing. He wished the night could stretch on, but duty beckoned. A charity gala for the state governor loomed in 36 hours, and his board demanded a grand appearance. Ethan despised such events, the currency of forced handshakes and the carnival of hidden agendas. Yet, once again, he astonished himself by inviting Claire to join him. "I don't own anything remotely worthy of such an event," she laughed softly. He offered a gentle grin and allowed the wealthiest man in the room to fret over that. When Saturday arrived, Claire stepped from a rideshare in a borrowed midnight blue gown, vintage yet flawless. Ethan's breath caught. She was unrefined enough to remain genuine, yet radiant enough to silence a ballroom. Inside the Fairmont's gilded hall, CEOs orbited around influential donors, and Ethan knew that while half the room meticulously calculated profit margins, the other half were orchestrating narratives. His CFO, Daniel Price, a man whose smile was perpetually distant, sidled up with a glass of champagne and new public relations strategies. "Meet Claire Jennings," Daniel drawled, as if assessing her like a ledger line item. After a few brief words exchanged in a darkened corridor lined with oil portraits, Daniel hissed, "The board isn't pleased with your recent disappearances. There's talk that the Mercier Group seeks a controlling stake. If you aren't visible, they'll move." Ethan's throat tightened. "We've got a poison pill, clause." Daniel shrugged. "Clause, don't stop the whispers persist." Then his gaze returned to the ballroom. "And keep the server charming but discreet. Investors prefer tidy narratives." Ethan's pulse pounded. Returning, he found Claire by the string quartet, hands clasped and posture poised yet clearly uneasy. He realized he had unwittingly drawn her into an environment tailored to wound him. Quietly, they slipped out before dessert, hailed a cab redolent of pine-scented air freshener. Inside the cab, Claire rested her head against the window as city lights flickered across her face. "They look at you like a formula," she whispered. "All variables and leverage, no space left for being human." When they reached his Beacon Hill apartment, a place that suddenly felt colder, Claire wandered toward a wall of expansive windows framing a stunning skyline. "Beautiful view," she said, "but it feels like there's glass between you and everything." Ethan longed to protest, yet the truth rang too clearly. His entire life had been like reinforced glass. Monday shattered the fragile calm. An urgent text summoned him to an emergency board meeting at noon. Entering the conference room, Ethan found Daniel already presenting a slide deck outlining a potential merger, crafted without his consent buzzwords like efficiency and shareholder value flashing before his eyes as he perceived nothing short of a coup. His chest constricted. "I'll reconvene after a private review," Ethan interrupted in a brittle tone. Daniel's thin, sharp smirk appeared as members drifted away. Ethan shot him a look that promised retribution and, seizing his phone, dialed Claire. He hesitated. How could one share corporate treachery with someone who served coffee? He tried again. The call went straight to voicemail. Anxiety prickled as a grim thought surfaced. Perhaps she'd discovered a richer narrative elsewhere. After all, people always depart when panic sets in. Barely recognizable in his own eyes, Ethan left the office and raced back to Maple and Main. The bell above the door tinkled, but the cafe was deserted, chairs overturned, tables askew, kitchen lights out. Stepping back onto the sidewalk, he saw a sleek black sedan decelerate. Inside, Daniel sat in the back seat, phone pressed to his ear with Claire. Ethan froze. Daniel glanced his way and muttered something Ethan couldn't decipher before the sedan sped off for a heartbeat. In that instant, Ethan's world split along a familiar fault line, trust versus survival. He could pursue the car, hurl accusations, or retreat and rebuild his fortress. His legs remained unmoving, heart thundering as cold, insistent rain resumed. Hours later, near midnight, Ethan unlocked his penthouse, mind bare, the indifferent city lights glimmering below. He poured a whiskey he had no intention of drinking when a timid knock sounded at his door. Opening it, he found Claire there, barefoot, soaked, clutching a sealed envelope. Her voice trembled. "I can explain everything, but you must read this first." Before Ethan could reply, heavy footsteps reverberated in the corridor, and Daniel Price appeared in the doorway, his eyes gleaming with a mix of triumph and menace. The envelope slipped from Claire's grasp. Was she friend or foe? Ethan's heart pounded, a single question surging louder than the storm. Who could he trust now? "Did you feel it, the panic as the car pulled away?" "Yes or no." Ethan's breath hitched as Daniel advanced, the hallway's light stretching long shadows on the hardwood. Claire froze, the silence between them so sharp it felt capable of cutting skin. Ethan's gaze dropped to the envelope lying at his feet, its edges damp from rain dripping off Claire's sleeves, his heart drumming like battle signals. Daniel's smile was smug and calculated. "Didn't expect to see me tonight, did you? You always presumed you were the smartest here, yet you failed to notice what was unfolding right before you." Claire stepped between them, her voice suddenly unwavering. "Stop. Daniel, you no longer frighten him. You never did." Ethan's eyes flitted from her to Daniel, back to the envelope. Inside, every fiber of him urged him to flee, to hide behind walls he'd spent years erecting. But he didn't move this time. He bent, tore open the envelope, and discovered two items. First, a copy of an internal email chain and accidental dispatch from Daniel to Claire detailing the hostile takeover plan designed to manipulate Ethan's mental health narrative to justify his ouster. Second, a handwritten letter from Claire, her words brief, cautious, and sincere. "Ethan, I never wished for you to learn it this way. I once worked with Daniel until a year ago, when I discovered what kind of man he truly was. He tried to reel me back with promises of money, revenge, power. I refused. But then I met you, and I couldn't explain. You weren't part of his scheme. You were something genuine that I hadn't felt in years. I attempted to stay distant, yet you kept returning, and I wanted to remain. I still do." When Ethan lifted his eyes, Claire's expression was unreadable, waiting, not pleading or defending. Simply waiting. Daniel took another step forward, but Ethan raised his hand to silence him. Quietly, he turned to Claire. "Why did you come back tonight?" She swallowed hard. "Because I refused to be the one who leaves when things get tough. I've been that person before I despised her. I didn't want you to see me that way." Ethan exhaled a breath so deep it felt like the first honest gasp in ages. "And were you working for him from the start?" "No," she replied firmly. "The day I spilled juice on your shirt was the day I stopped hiding from people like him." Ethan's tone dropped. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I believed that if you knew my past, you'd view yourself and me as irreparably damaged." Daniel scoffed from behind them, his tone condescending. "That doesn't change anything, Ethan. You're done." They've already cast their votes. Calmly, Ethan turned to him. Actually, you should check your inbox. You're the one who's finished. For a brief moment, confusion flashed across Daniel's face. I may have been struggling, Ethan continued, but I wasn't oblivious. The moment you slipped behind my back, I moved too. The poison pill has already been triggered. Your shares are diluted. You're finished. Ethan gestured toward the door. You're trespassing now. Please leave. Daniel hesitated as defeat's cracks spread across his face like ice under pressure. Then in silence, he turned and departed. The door clicked shut and heavy stillness descended. Claire looked at Ethan, her eyes glistening with uncertainty. I understand if you don't want to see me again, she whispered, but I meant every word I wrote even if it's too late. For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. He gazed at her not with suspicion, not with reproach, but with something gentler, something undeniably human. I spent years building a fortress to keep everyone out, he murmured slowly, only to find that I wasn't shielding myself, I was starving my soul. Claire stepped closer, cautiously asking, so what now? He exhaled as if releasing years of pent-up fear. Now we see if I remember how to let someone in. In the weeks that followed, nothing was perfect. Trust cannot be reconstructed overnight. Still, there were nights when silence crept in like fog, but Claire remained not to fix him, but simply to be there. Each day, she returned to Maple and Main, apron tied, sleeves rolled, smile gentle, and Ethan came to sometimes for the coffee, sometimes just for her presence. They never rushed labels or planned too far ahead. Gradually, Ethan allowed his barriers to crumble. He invited her to genuine dinners, not to glitzy galas, but real meals. He spoke of his father for the first time in years and showed her the lone childhood photograph he'd long concealed away. He learned to sit with discomfort and speak rather than retreat. One evening, while closing up the cafe together, Claire scrawled for simple words on the wall near their table, "You chose to stay." Ethan smiled when he saw it, picked up the marker, and added a line beneath it, "And so did I in the end." It wasn't therapy, science, or a miracle cure that saved him. It was presence. It was being truly seen without judgment. It was love offered not as a remedy, but as a recurring choice, a choice made again and again, even on the hard days. For Ethan Walker, the man who had everything except peace, that was finally enough. Now we want to hear from you. Do you believe that love can heal what medicine cannot? Yes or no? If you felt something real while watching, please comment 100 below. Share where you're watching from, and don't forget to pass this on to someone who needs a reminder. Sometimes the heart can only be healed by another heart that chooses to care.